So I'm so excited to be here, and welcome to day 2 of South-South Dialogue on Sustainability, Traditional Medicine in Global South. And if you were with us yesterday, so welcome back. It's day 2. And if you were not with us yesterday, and I'm so happy you are here with us today. And so this workshop or conversation was a collaboration between PHM, which is Public Health Movement, and Global University for Sustainability in Hong Kong. And I also want to just shout out to the unsung heroes. And this whole workshop and the conversation won't be available without the support of infrastructure and the labor from all the wonderful students and faculty members from Lingnan University in Hong Kong as well. So even though they are interpreters, so even though they are invisible, but without their support, there's no way we can carry on this conversation here. And so I am your moderator or presider today, and my name is Jialin Li, so you can call me Li Jialin. And right now I'm teaching at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse in the United States. And my background is sociology, and I was born and grew up in China, of course. And so my research interests include motherhood, public health, traditional medicine, and environmental justice. So yesterday we had the opportunity and honor to hear 2 wonderful conversations from Bolivia and China. And today we have an incredible list of speakers, and we're going to hear from the struggle and experience from India and also South Africa. So because we have 4 speakers today, so I just want to dive in and let's start the conversation. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to introduce the first speaker from India, and then we're going to hear his PowerPoint, and we're going to hear his presentation, and then I'm going to introduce the 3 speakers and scholars from South Africa, and they're going to do the presentation. And towards the end, we're going to have enough time and to have Q&A sessions for all the 4 speakers. So our first speaker is Dr. Unnikrishnan, and he is currently a professor at the University of Trans-Disciplinary Health Sciences and Technology. He has an undergraduate degree in Ayurveda from Bharatiya University and a master's degree in medical anthropology from the University of Amsterdam, Netherlands. He holds a doctoral degree in international development studies from Yokohama National University in Japan. Very global, very international. Formerly, he was with the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, Tokyo, and the International Institute for Global Health, Kuala Lumpur, in various capacities. His research interests are traditional medicine, biodiversity, public health, and sustainable development. So he's going to be joined by a couple of his colleagues during their presentation. And so the floor is yours, and we are very excited you are here, and we can't wait to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Jialin, for that generous introduction. First of all, can you hear me, Manu? Yeah. First of all, Dr. Roman and Dr. Vivian, thank you so much for connecting all of us together. And also Dr. Ravi Narayan, the former PSM coordinator. I think he has been instrumental in connecting the Indian colleagues, and it's really wonderful. We had a really nice presentation by Professor Sitsi yesterday, and I was tempted to even change my slides after that. But for the benefit of translators, I did not do that, and I held myself back. It was so wonderful, Professor Sitsi. And thank you, Jialin, for this session. I would also like to acknowledge and thank my fellow colleagues from Africa, Dr. Hombakazi, Professor Gubela, Dr. Rosemary, and all other participants. And with that, let me share my slides and start the presentation. Okay, four of my colleagues have contributed to this presentation. Mr. Hariram Murthy, he is on the call already, and Professor Rutupriya, Sarika Chaturvedi, and of course, Ravi Narayan. And I think they will be joining, and we can hear brief interventions from there as well. So I'm going to give you the Indian context of traditional medicine. I think the struggles are very similar in different contexts, and that makes our solidarity also very, very timely. So what I'm going to do is to give an overview of the traditional medicines in India, then go to the history and the development milestones, and what are the most contemporary developments, both in the government sector as well as the civil society interventions, and what are some of the future potentials and challenges. So this will be the sequence of my presentation. So if you come to the what we call as the Indian healing heritage, we have two types of knowledge streams. One is the long history of the codified, the textual traditions, very similar to China. And we have around 7 systems of medicine which are officially recognized in the Indian health system, apart from Western biomedicine. These systems are Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Tibetan medicine, which is called also as Sova Rigpa. Then we have yoga, naturopathy, and homeopathy. And all these medical systems have their own bachelor's and master's programs. And there are several colleges teaching these tradition. And it is an inclusive approach to pluralism, where these systems are not taught along with biomedicine, but they are taught in separate colleges. There are outside this, there are also other healing practices from other countries, but they are not regulated in India. And apart from that, so that's the formal and codified, the textual stream. Outside that, we have a large array of folk practices, the indigenous healing traditions. So according to the Anthropological Survey of India, we have around 4,635 communities in India, and around 705 indigenous communities are officially recognized. And this is based on the People of India report by the Anthropological Survey of India. And so so that's a vast knowledge base that is there across the country, across these communities, which are ethnic community specific, biogeography specific. It's culturally very diverse, and these are not part of the official systems of care. So they may relate to like simple primary healthcare interventions, health and nutritional interventions, the rituals, customs. And we heard a lot from Vivian yesterday, how beautifully similar situations are also in India. There are specialized healing traditions in areas like bone setting, poison healing. These are like centuries old and currently existing healing traditions. There are birth attendants who are still very active in Indian rural context. There are also veterinary healers. So when we talk about Indian heritage, it's not just about human health, it's also about plant health and animal health. So what we'll be sharing is also about the biocultural heritage and how this healing is intertwined within the biocultural context of India. So if you look at the historical milestones, like in China, very similar, we have the documented history of medicinal plant use from 7,000 BC. But I think the codified nature of it comes from the Vedic period, which is around 1,500 BC to 500 BC. And that is when the last Veda, called Atharva Veda, is the source of healing tradition within India. So it is also codified in that form. Then, of course, the post-Vedic period, which is from 500 BC to subsequent period, the Buddha as a healing guru is very well known. Then, if you look at the codified health systems like Ayurveda and Siddha, you can see between 500 BC to around 1500 AD, you see different timelines where major compilations, major compendiums were written, and that goes till 1500. And this is undiluted tradition that is continuing. Then, of course, there are influences from Persia and China in between. Lots of give and takes happen during this period, which is the medieval period mainly. Then the colonial writing starts. So the first colonial expression was the Garcia Devota, which is basically a Portuguese material. Then, of course, the Cristobal Acostas and the 12 volumes of Hortus Malabaricus. This is currently in Leiden. This is a large collection of Indian remedies documented between 1678 and 1693 by one of the governors, Andrew Van Reed. And there are a lot of recent documentations on healing tradition. But till 15th century, till 16th century, colonial period, there is a continuity to this healing tradition. But then that gets broken during the colonial period. And that's where I think many threads are lost. Now, if you look at the contemporary developments, till 1920s, there was no distinction between what we call as Western biomedicine or what then was called as indigenous health traditions. And the various medical streams were approached equally by public. But there was an Indian Medical Degrees Act, which is called the Imperial Act in 1916, that divided or that made the divide between the biomedicine and other healing traditions. But then there were several provincial acts in 1930s up to when the independence period. India got independence from the British in 1948. So till that period, there were several provincial acts which went on to guide the health system. Then, of course, during that period, it was just called indigenous medicine. There was no formalization of the codified or the non-codified traditions, and it became Indian systems of medicine. And subsequently, now Vivian would remember when she came to the global conference in Jamnagar. Now it is called the Ministry of Ayush. That is the acronym for all the healing traditions put together. Ayush and local health tradition. That's what we use. So there was an Indian Medical Council Act, which further divided the biogeography specific local healing traditions and the more systematized institutionalized traditions in India. And that happened in 1970s. And there were various national health policies. Immediately after Alma-Ata in 1978, we had the first national health policy in 1983, which took cognizance of the traditional medicine in India. So the first post-independent report on health system was the Bore Committee report, which completely neglected the traditional medical systems in India. And that is when all the healers and the shamans, the indigenous practitioners suffered a lot. And it took almost 25 to 30 years till the Indian Medical Council Act came that they got some support from the government system. Of course, 2002, there was a draft national health policy for Indian systems of medicine. And 2017 policy talks a lot about medical pluralism, and it is mandated under the National Health Policy of 2017 that traditional healing systems are an integral part of this. So from 1995, if you look at the situation, it was earlier called the Department of Indian Systems of Medicine and Homeopathy. Homeopathy, though originally it is a German system of medicine, it was really patronized in India and it got integrated. Unani, which is a Greek Arabic tradition, that got integrated. And of course, Ayurveda and Siddha. Siddha is a medical system from the southern part of India. So Ayurveda is practiced all over the country, except in some pockets which are really remote. And then we have the Sorikpa, which is Soarikpa, which is the Trans-Himalayan Tibetan medicine. So these are all put together in 1995 called the Indian Systems of Medicine, but it was renamed in 2003, immediately after the National Draft Act, as the Ayush. Then, of course, the Trans-Himalayan system, Soarikpa, was recognized into the Indian Medical Council Act in 2011. And by 2014, we had the ministry working for that. Now the focus is much more techno-managerial, looking into mainstreaming the traditional medical systems into health systems. There is a lot of technology interventions that are taking place. So a lot of medicalization is happening within the traditional medical circle also. There's a lot of commercial interest that is happening, and we will come to that when we discuss the politics of knowledge. Now, the current status of human resources and institutions, there are 755,780 registered medical practitioners of the Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, Tibetan medicine, and homeopathy, and yoga and naturopathy. There are a total 886 undergraduate colleges, 251 postgraduate colleges, which offer MD. We also have the DM degree recently. From this year, we will have in 5 disciplines DM in traditional medicine as well. So the annual intake is almost 60,000 for traditional medicine. For PG courses, postgraduate courses, it is around 7,500. There are like 4,000 hospitals and 36,000. So these numbers are large, but it looks small for a country like India. And there are almost 9,000 manufacturing industries. So you can see, and out of this, around 30 are major multinational companies which are playing in this sector. So it's a really mushrooming industry as well. But outside this, there is 1 million folk healers who are practicing in rural areas, and they are still active there. Now, coming to so it's very formalized now. There are pharmacopoeias, formularies for each system of medicine. There are national councils. There are national research institutes for each system of medicine. And a lot of evidence is being generated also. So unlike many other countries, probably India and China, or probably also Japan, Korea, and few Western Pacific regional countries which have formalized these traditional medical knowledge. There are even now monographs on so many plants and so on. Now, yesterday, Professor Sitsi talked about COVID-19 and the developments. I think COVID-19 was really a kind of waterfall for the sector of traditional medicine. But there was a lot of contestation of a legitimate space for the traditional medicine to practice in India. So Ayush involvement in curative institutional care was a major point of contention in many states. And they were alienated, marginalized, and they were not allowed to practice in the initial period, in the first quarantine and lockdown periods. But most Ayurvedic practitioners and Ayush practitioners practice privately, extensively, and that's how a lot of public support came about from a bottom-up approach today. So there is national protocol for COVID practice, and series of guidelines were put out by the Ministry of Ayush. Extensive research. A lot of clinical trial guidelines were published, and clinical trial registries were getting filled with traditional medicine research programs. But so what has been the learning is that over the decades, significant shift has happened during the COVID period in public perception towards traditional medicine. And this was presented yesterday also by Chinese colleagues, and through supportive policies. And much efforts are required to make more evidence-based systematic algorithms for institutionalized delivered care. So in India, it's a large country, so different states, health is a state subject. So different states follow their own guidelines for health, but there are national protocols and guidelines as well. So during COVID period, different states had different policies. In some states, there were integrated practice allowed, etc., etc. Now, coming to the civil society initiatives, some of us, my colleagues here, we have all worked with civil society organizations for decades now. So in 1995, when the large conservation programs was initiated for medicinal plants in India, it was in 1995, and it was both an in situ and ex situ. And this was first started by civil society organizations, a large network of NGOs across the country. Then there were interventions in areas like public health areas like malaria, iron deficiency, anemia, etc., etc. There were livelihood programs across the country. Enterprises were developed for value addition in medicinal plants. Educational research programs were also developed in last 3 decades by civil society organizations. But through strong advocacy, now the National Medicinal Plant Board, which was established by Government of India in 2002, they have started also integrating this. So basically, if you look at the traditional medicine sector, all these multiple stakeholders come together in attempting conservation both in situ and ex situ, look at community health, nutrition, well-being, and livelihood and equity. So this is a picture of the thing we have. India has around 19 forest types from alpine, mountainous regions to really the what we call as the seascapes or the communities who live in fisher folk communities. And in those areas, so these 19 forest types have different medicinal species. So there are conservation areas across India in 13 states, around 108 conservation sites, and 2,000 medicinal plants are conserved in these, and 316 medicinal plants. So action, this is done in public and private participation. So there's a lot of work that civil society organizations that do with the state forest departments. This covers various biogeographical zones. Red listed species are protected. Actually, around 300 species are in various endangered categories, and around 20 are almost critically endangered, whole of India. And nurseries are established and so on. And there are threat assessments, population studies, mapping, and community participatory activities are happening. So these are some of the forest types. To alpine to mangrove regions. So these are some of the activities in the Trans-Himalayan region, just giving a talk. So in each conservation area, the communities are identified. The medicinal plants which are endangered are identified through systematic research, and with the community participation and engagement, these activities are done. So this is one of the databases that the NGOs have developed. We have the Indian medicinal plant database, which talks about 6,560 species. And compared to Chinese sources, because in China it's around more than 11,000 species, compared to that, the Indian numbers are smaller. So this is available online, and it has the morphology and all the details available, the local names, because we have around 23 official languages in India. And in all these languages, you can search these databases. So this is the snapshot. Ayurveda uses around 1,539, but you can see the biogeographic specific indigenous community traditions, which are completely marginalized, which is completely neglected in the national program sometimes. They use around 5,340 species. And across different medical systems, this is the pattern of use. So you can see how broad this medical system is. This is an integrated database which can be searched through online sources. I'm giving you these factual things before going to the politics of knowledge, just to give you how formalized it has become now. Now, apart from that, there are folk healers network across the country, which is formed by NGOs, and it is they are there existing in 23 states and 125 sub-districts. And there are systematic documentation that is happening, and there are community-based assessments based on the reputation of medicinal drug use, etc., with solid epidemiological methods and so on. And so this was started by NGOs, but later it was taken by the national research institutes, including the Central Council for Research in Ayurveda or Siddha, etc. And so this is also slightly mainstream. One of the programs that may be of interest to you, that there is a healer certification and accreditation program under the Indian Standards Organization, International Standards Organization, sorry, 1724. And in India, the counterpart is the Quality Council of India, which makes the national standards for personal or product or process certification. So through this, personal healers are certified and various under in a collaborative process with the government departments, NGOs, and so on. So there are regular healers and knowledge exchanges, visits that are happening. And this is a very interesting program which is taken up because these healers are also now a first point of referrals for like national programs like tuberculosis or leprosy and so on, because they are the first contact in India. Now, another interesting program in the veterinary sector is the country is on a major drive, especially led by the civil NGOs for antimicrobial reduction. Because among BRICS countries, India is one of the major contributors for antimicrobial use and resistance. So in livestock farming, traditional medicine is integrated. And through the National Dairy Development Board, and this is a cooperative activity across the country, and it is driven by small milk unions and federated farmer organizations. Through that, across 27 states, medicines are distributed for conditions like mastitis and so on. Around 2,000 veterinarians have been trained, dairy farmers are trained, etc. So 34 conditions are under this program. And recently, this year, the National Veterinary Standard Treatment Guidelines also brought the traditional medicine practices into that. And this is through the participation of FAO and the Department of Animal Husbandry at the national level, at the federal level. So through the National Dairy Development Board, there is a knowledge portal. Any farmer can go onto this portal. They can get the information in their 13 local languages, vernacular languages, and this is available. Now, one of the main focus area for NGOs in India today is how do you strengthen self-reliance and population self-reliance? So we are not just talking about tertiary, secondary, or primary care. We are talking about a level below that, which is the community care level. How self-care can be promoted, and we call it the fourth tier in the health system. And this is really the spirit of people's health movement, because but it should assure continuum of care, because it's not that there should not be that connection to continuum of care. But I think this fourth tier, the below radar level, the marginalized sections care, I think is very critical in a country like India, where access is still very limited, quality of care is limited, we are far from UHC, etc. So, and this contrasts purely from a biomedical approach. As Vivian pointed out, the spiritual traditions, we have three forms of healing. There is the spiritual healing tradition, there is the psychological or the mental healing, and then the drug-related healing, the medicinal plants or the medicinal minerals and animal parts and products. So under these three sections, so this is a holistic approach which gives importance also to the higher realms, the non-material, the non-physical dimensions of care. And this is what we are actively now working on. The people's, it's people's health in people's hands. And we do community to community learning exchange programs for last almost 17 to 18 years. So healers, indigenous communities and local people, indigenous peoples and local communities, as they are known in the biodiversity circles. So there are capacity building programs on traditional medicine conservation and equitable access and benefit sharing under the biodiversity convention on biological diversity. There are student exchanges that are happening. There are also professional exchange programs. So the NGOs are now collaborating with the United Nations University, UNDP, and several other organizations like Traffic, the IUCN, GIZ, and so on. Then there are also players, the hospitals, the university systems. So we have had participants from the Americas, from Guatemala, Chile, Peru, so many countries. And from Africa, we have active exchange programs, and that's also happening. But I think I should mention that after COVID, this has not been very effective because we had to stop all these programs post-COVID, and we are really looking forward to collaborating with PHM to strengthen this program. From Asia, we have had participants from different countries and from the Europe. So these are some of the shots of the exchange programs. There are national programs. The second picture is a global exchange program, and we had several participants from Bolivia, Peru, Chile, Guatemala, and so on, from especially the Central and South America. And the Malaysian exchange program, this was in Kampala, the lower, the other pictures, and in Africa, we cooperate with Prometra, which is a Pan-African organization for promoting traditional medicine, and so on. And this is an exchange program, which was a series of programs we conducted on ABS, access and benefit sharing. And this is a program which was held in Bangalore, and so on. Of course, South and Southeast Asia exchanges, the Asian Healing Wisdom Conference, which happened in Thailand, and so on. So now I will close with 2-3 more slides. So what we have been doing with PHM in Gunashwasthi Kendra, when the first People's Health Movement Assembly was held in 2000, we were there as a collective. There was a National Assembly of Traditional Practitioners and Healers, and then we went to Savar, and we had wonderful workshops there. In 2018, we again did this. I'm sorry. Just trying to. And of course, in Thailand, there was a Princess Mahidol conference where our African healers and Indian healers participated as well. And all these were organized by the People's Health Movement. Then, of course, my colleague today is in an indigenous forum where in the central part of India, where indigenous communities across the country come together. So he's participating in that. He's on the panel now. He will make short intervention after this. We have the World Ayurveda Congress, the Global Ayurveda Festival, and other gatherings. With advocacy, we've been able to establish an institute for folk medicine by the government support and then some state boards. And through constant interaction between WHO and the Convention on Biological Diversity, we have the interagency liaison group, and now it is called the Expert Working Group on Biodiversity and Health. And this, very happy to share that in COP 16 in Cali, Colombia, this biodiversity and health, the global plan was adopted. And this is not a mandatory adoption, but this is a voluntary activity. So we expect that there will be a lot of more focus on indigenous healing traditions. And what is surprising is also that there is a subsidiary body under the CBD, Secretariat of CBD, now for indigenous peoples and local communities, and also very welcome development. And these two are significant developments from Cali, Colombia, a month back. Now with Sochara, Dr. Ravinarayan, who connected us with People's Health Movement and so on, there has been several reports in various periods for national planning and so on. And so there is an activist phase for the NGOs, but there is also a collaborative phase with the national planning process, and that's worked very well. So to summarize and conclude, we have looked at the area of biological resources, that is the medicinal plants, the animals and parts. There is comprehensive work in that direction. The knowledge resources, there are interdisciplinary research programs. There is a program called Ayurveda Biology or Ayurbiology that is looking at conceptual and epistemological aspect of traditional medicine and how evidence can be generated or evidence can be compiled on some of the epistemological dimensions of traditional medicine. We have seriously looked at both folk healers and the formalized healing traditions. Then public health is a major program now. The National Control Program for NCDs, the non-communicable diseases, this active program, and equity and livelihood, intercultural approaches for knowledge assessment, of course, education, protection of knowledge. The government of India has the traditional knowledge digital library, which is a defensive protection. So the WIPO treaty was also another welcome development. So I think this year, 2024, there's been in May, the WIPO treaty was adopted. So the indigenous knowledge protection, of course, there are several controversies, but it is becoming prominent. So this is one aspect. Indigenous rights is becoming important, and the sacred landscapes, etc. Institutionalization is being thought about. And the issues of commercialization and medicalization is highly being criticized as well, and partnerships and networking. So, but there are several challenges. There is constant conflict between biomedicine and traditional medicine. And I think I must be very frank here. Within the people's health movement itself, there has been several challenges in understanding this landscape of indigenous healing tradition. So people are asking integration of systems for better health outcomes as a goal, or is it just for a romantic purpose that we are integrating? And where is the evidence for the public government sector too? And these are questions constantly asked in national planning bodies, etc. And the healers have to fight this out. And then there is the public health care delivery is not a choice. That's what many people are saying. It should not be left to the health seeker. So you don't need to promote a health system without evidence just because people are going for that care. Like in major epidemics, in COVID, this is what has happened. And traditional systems were fully marginalized in the initial period. But then the Ministry of Ayush and the civil society organizations had to do the advocacy to mainstream it, and it was successful. And there are, for integration, is there added value? Is it just a kind of, we are creating a smoke around the system that this is traditional, this is indigenous, this has to survive? Or, so these are the questions that we have to confront always. Is it creating cost burden? Is it creating confusion in patients? Because integrative protocols are not yet there. But there is a research group that is emerging. So these are being addressed in those research in last 15 years. And what is the framework for integration? Constantly these questions arise. And each Ayush system, like Ayurveda has its own approach, Siddha, Sovarikpa, they have their own approach. How do you integrate? So this is another thing. Finally, the commercial interest, because traditional medicine is highly commercialized in India. The natural resources are being exploited. A lot of plants are becoming endangered. A lot of communities are getting alienated. And so is this the root cause for medicalization and integration? And that is, but happy to say that 2024 has been a real area for recognition of indigenous peoples, because we had the WIPO treaty, then suddenly the Colombia announcements for the subsidiary body and the ABS and biodiversity and health. And just before that, the GCTM, the Global Center for Traditional Medicine, which was established by the support of Government of India. They are seriously looking at the issues of evidence and learning, data and analytics, sustainability and equity. That is where the PAHO organized last year a major conference in Rio de Janeiro, and a lot of indigenous groups attended that. And yesterday there were colleagues in this forum from the PAHO conference as well. And the GCTM is also looking at innovation and technology. And from this year, that is taking shape. That's a big hope. The United Nations framework, UNFCCC COP29 is going on, and that is creating a lot of focus on climate and health and marginalized populations. UNCCD is happening next month in Riyadh. That's another opportunity where health is being discussed. So health in relation to land, health in relation to climate, health in relation to biodiversity resources, health in relation to protection of knowledge and indigenous people. All these are being discussed this year. And this is a lucky year, I think, for all of us. With that, thank you very much for this invitation. And I conclude. And my colleague Hariram Murthy is online. So if you can give him a panel opportunity, please, and he will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes.
And I must introduce Hariram Murthy before, and also Professor Ritupriya has joined, so they will make short interventions. So Hariram Murthy has been a colleague working with healers and indigenous communities in India for last more than 3 decades, and a lot of networking, both nationally and internationally, has been done by Hariram Murthy. And some of our healers colleagues have also joined in the call, but we don't probably have enough time. And so over to Hari.
Thank you, Unni. We must thank colleagues from Bolivia and other South American countries and from China, from Africa, for having brought this South-South dialogue to exchange our ideas. We also thank Roman Vega for having made this possible. I just want to acknowledge that this was possible at a very short notice. With the help of Ravi Narayan, we coordinated a brief discussion with our people. I am joined by a healer's representative here, Subhanandan. There are in the outside, we are having 176 healers from different parts of India. They are participating in a dialogue, national dialogue, which started yesterday, and it will go on till 19th. So we would like to assure you that we are willing to host you to come to India. We may not be able to pay for your travel, but we can host your local travel and lodging and boarding for knowledge exchange, which we have been doing with the help of various organizations, and Unni has been facilitating these contacts with various international organizations. Even in this place, we have had healers from South America to Africa and other parts of Asia. But this year, due to some legal problem, they could not come. So one is knowledge exchange across people's health movements, because we must be in a position to express solidarity among all the peoples of the world to come together and fight the hegemony of the industrial culture that is dominating for the sake of profit. And I would like to thank Ritupriya ji also for having joined at a very short notice. I would like to thank you once again, and over to Unni and Ritupriya. And if there are questions, I am willing to answer them. And I have the colleague from Healers Network. We have a very large number of healers in various states. They are all meeting here right now. Thank you.
So nice. Thank you, Hari. And nice that Subhanandan, also healer from Tamil Nadu, could also join here, and wish you all. I would quickly introduce Professor Ritupriya, and she is from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, and she's been part of the active PHM and the Medical Friends Circle and various civil society programs, and she's been so supportive of the healers' work in India. So over to you.
Can I just come in for 2 minutes just now? Is that time? Okay.
Yes, please.
Well, I joined Unni and Harinamji, my colleagues, in the civil society and the social movement on traditional medicine in India, to really thank Roma Vega and others in PHM for organizing this and getting us all together. I would like to sort of add to the kind of good news picture that Unni has put before us, which I completely agree with. It is really heartwarming, and to see the kind of increase in activity on traditional medicine within the formal and informal systems today in India. And yet I think we need to recognize, as we heard in Dr. Jade's presentation about China yesterday, that it still seems the formal system seems to be taking traditional medicine very much in the corporate capitalist kind of mode in that direction. And the epistemological exchange and the epistemological recognition that needs to come is not yet happening. It's the pharmaceutical industry which is taking the front seat. Even the most of the evidence generation is about the pharmaceutical products of these systems, and not keeping the roots of the epistemological holism that one sees in these systems. Therefore, that is just a caution for all of us to see how we can, work more in that direction. And I think that's important for PHM also. One was part of, again, as Unni had narrated, in Dhaka, where we had organized jointly the session on traditional medicine as resistance and resilience. And that dimension of people's power being asserted through traditional medicine is something we need to keep foregrounding, especially in the international context. I just want to flag, I'm sure many of the people here are familiar with it, but the issue of the WIPO treaty, which one was very excited by the text that has gone on into discussion for the last 20 years. But what has actually been signed by governments is a very, very whittled down document, which has actually conceded a lot of what the industry wanted, industry of the high income country world, and not the interests of the folk healers and holders of traditional knowledge as much. While it recognizes the folk healers, it is in a sense legalized the biopiracy that was recognized by the Biodiversity Convention as something to be overcome. And yet it goes on to place it there and then give very whittled down provisions for its use and benefit sharing, and for patent offices which are not given any teeth through that legal document. I'm just flagging this because I think it's an issue that PHM must take up. PHM with its focus both on political economy and the politics of knowledge. And the politics of knowledge is what we're all focusing on here today, so that epistemological justice and political knowledge has to become central to the PHM activities as well. Thanks. I'll stop.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it from our side. The other colleagues haven't joined. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I have to acknowledge it's a very supportive, very powerful, very collective presentation, and we can enjoy, we can see from the Zoom call. And also the speakers have raised a lot of powerful questions for People's Health Movement and all of us. And but next we're gonna hear 3 speakers from South Africa, and we're gonna hear more about the experience of indigenous healers and traditional healers from a different geographical location. And so please, if you have, because we just listened to the Indian speakers, and if you have any questions, or if there are some like running thoughts you are kind of processing, and just feel free to put all of your thoughts and questions, and particularly questions, into the Q&A tab. And so I will read it through, and we will have time to kind of answer and think through all of those questions. And particularly, we have actual healers here on call, so that's a great opportunity for us. And so the next three speakers are from South Africa, and the first is Mercy Hombakazi Nqandeka. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name.
Oh, it's okay.
And she
Totally.
and she's a PhD candidate at Stellenbosch University under Division of Disability and Rehabilitation. Her research focuses on the exploration of resilience from an indigenous healer perspective. And the second speaker is Gubela NG, and she is a professor in the Division of Disability and Rehabilitation Studies from the same university, and her work focuses on transformation, disability, indigenous knowledge systems, and rural health. And our last speaker is Dr. Rosemary Chimbala Kalanka, and she is based at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, and she is a democratic pace setter, visionary, and compassionate leader who leads HIV/AIDS research at local, regional, provincial, and national levels. And I read all of your kind of essays, most of your essays, and I'm very excited for you for your presentation here today. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having us here. This is very exciting that on a Saturday afternoon in South Africa, we are able to share knowledge with the scholars, researchers from all around the world. That's such an honor. So I'm looking actually into, I just want to share slides. Oops.
It's sharing, but not in full screen.
Okay, I want to do that. Oh no. Okay. So my research actually looks into it explores the resilience of indigenous healers from my region, the area that I'm born at. But right now I'm looking into, there was an act in South Africa during apartheid time in 1957. It was called the Witchcraft Suppression Act, and its target was the healers. But the witchcraft was used as a blanket approach, like as a blanket word. And when you ask, interrogating the act, you don't really get what they label as witchcraft. So my talk today, it includes the introduction, the impact of the act on indigenous healers, the resilience of indigenous healers, and the current challenges. So in this paper, we deliberately use indigenous health or indigenous healers because that represents the use of indigenous health knowledge by practitioners. And it is also open, it changes, and it occurs in the context that the indigenous healers live in. So as of the works of Mji, who is part of the setup now, my professor, the term traditional, it's always used or refers to indigenous healers as the opposite of modern, if you like. It carries really problematic implications. It suggests that these people, these knowledge holders are educated, they're primitive, they're updated, they're just stereotypes that undermine the legitimacy and the sophistication of indigenous healing practices. So that was the legacy of apartheid in South Africa, whereby by virtue of being Black, you are problematic, you are not enough, you are uneducated, you are primitive, you are a heathen, you need civilization, So the Witchcraft Act of 1957, it was actually an apartheid law era in South Africa, and it criminalized practices relating to witchcraft. I put that in inverted commas because what is witchcraft? What is practicing witchcraft? I explained this to someone. And it targeted indigenous healers, in their practices, and it aimed to suppress indigenous beliefs, framing them as dangerous, illegitimate, superstitious, and baseless. So the impact that this had on indigenous healers was that they were criminalized, marginalized, pushed outside, And they are the custodians of culture in our context, and the medical knowledge was actually criminalized. And the practices were labeled as witchcraft, and that led to arrests of some of them, for practicing, and they were prosecuted, and there was a lot of stigma around indigenous healing. And also this also caused a loss of cultural heritage, like because it was eroding. Imagine people being suppressed and being talked out and being forced out their ways of being, their indigenous healing, their culture, expressions of their culture. And in our culture, we believe that it is a calling to be a healer. So people were kind of discouraged from taking the calling, as if a calling is something you can dismiss like that, and but the indigenous healers have continued to show resilience in their own way. They rebelled, against a system that was suppressing them through secretive continuation of practices. Some healers worked in secrecy, preserving their practices and adapting them to avoid detection. And they used coded language or used private settings such as forests or somewhere hidden, where they could operate. And there was community solidarity and support because the communities did need the use of their indigenous healing. And so the community pushed and was part of the preservation. And it is communities that continue to maintain the cultural practices despite these attempts to erase the indigenous knowledge. And in terms of revitalization and legal recognition, in 1994, when South Africa gained independence, there was a movement towards legalization of indigenous healing practices. And this led to healers gaining some kind of formal recognition, which allowed them to practice openly. But there are ongoing challenges, which is one of them being the pressure from biomedicine. The issue is that at hand is that the act was actually not repealed. There was an act that was set up in 2007 that actually allows and healers to openly function, but the elephant in the room is that act, the 1957 Witchcraft Suppression Act. And also there's cultural biases and patient pressure, to continue. People are being influenced to choose over biomedicine over indigenous healing, and indigenous healers are still very labeled, that their practices are unfounded and they're unscientific and ineffective. Now, the ongoing bias, it does create tension, because communities often feel very pressured to abandon their cultural practices in favor of of Western medicine. But despite all this, resilience remains the tool. I mean, the only way that indigenous survive, the pressures. There's this duality in health in South Africa, and indigenous healers have adopted it very much, in terms of, for example, in HIV, in TB, there is an understanding that sometimes indigenous medicine cannot cure, and that's when indigenous healers do refer their patients to the hospitals, but you don't get that referral back, so there's still that there's that undermining and tension. And yeah, thank you. That was my presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I'm really feel honored to be, oh, the slides have gone again. Simon, can you? Yes, thank you. I'm really honored to be here today, and I have really been listening with such interest to the presentation from India. And I can see that in South Africa, we need to really learn a lot from how they have supported their indigenous healers. I also acknowledge that somehow we only received democracy and independence in 96. So we are still very young in terms of finding our voice just to speak about indigenous issues as a Black South African. It's actually a journey, a very an easy journey, but we are very much prepared to continue with the journey. For the health of our people, we intend to continue. So here I'm going to speak about a small case study of Amabomvane, who really had been very resilient in terms of their indigenous knowledge system. Simon, next slide, please. Amabomvane are an indigenous community from the eastern province of South Africa, and they stay in an enclosed area which is between the Mbashe River and the Crosse River, as well as the Indian Ocean. So they are in this encased area. The majority of people here haven't gone through formal education, but they don't see themselves as uneducated. They see their indigenous knowledge system as the base for their education. So they see themselves as educated within the indigenous knowledge system. And for them, knowledge is carried by word of mouth. And they also, their leader, who you can see standing there, he believes that somehow the entry of civilization in the weaponized by religion, education, and biomedicine has brought sickness to their area and have undermined their existing indigenous knowledge systems. And because then biomedicine or allopathic health has entrenched itself within the area, and it is offered by a biomedical hospital as well as 10 clinics. So the people in this area are rubbed in their face of this approach, that means allopathic medicine. So what do they do? How do they respond to this? They use both allopathic and indigenous medicine interchangeably. And for them, it's not a big issue, but the big issue lies within allopathic medicine. Allopathic medicine doesn't like it that the indigenous community still respect the indigenous healers of this area. Next slide, please. So the area itself, I think because it's close to the Indian Ocean and these two rivers, is quite a luscious area with green vegetation and small forests and one big provincial national reserve forest. So that's the area whereby these indigenous healers are able to get some of their indigenous medicines. In the area, there is a strong symbiotic relationship between people, animals, water, and the land. And a majority of births still happen at home with placentas combined with the soil. And they believe that when you combine the placentas, the animal residue, the placentas of the animals, you create a fertile land whereby if you go down to the valleys of this area, that's where you get your indigenous herbs. And they also believe that a child born in this area, because of the combination of the placentas and the animals and the plants and the waters, if the child is sick, you just need to look around. You will find the rightful herb to assist that sick child. Next slide, please. So the people of this area, before really foreign entries and the apartheid system, were very much disciplined group of people. They saw themselves as having certain obligations. For them, the critical obligation was the creation of healthy homes. And they believe that each household need to contribute young, healthy adults and children who understands the practices of the Bomvane culture. They have a strong belief that happy, healthy homes make happy, healthy villages. Hence, for the Bomvane person to fulfill these obligations, they had to do the following. Next slide, please. The first obligation is that once a woman has conception, the child need to be supported first through the pregnancy of the woman and through the various stages of the child after the child has been given birth until the child is actually an adult person. Secondly, each family, it is an obligation to produce sufficient food and to feed the family until satiety. Thirdly, each family and the village need to give recognition to the spirits of Amabomvane, and they need to really give spiritual reverence to ancestors and to celebrate the ancestors for giving them sufficient food, for giving them health, and for sustaining the people of Bomvane. So then, coming to the indigenous healers of KwaBomvane, the indigenous healers of KwaBomvane are divided into 5 categories. The first category is Amagqirha. And Amagqirha, they go into training for more or less 5 years. And these are the people who go into deviation, consulting with ancestral spirits, treatment of spiritual symptoms, and conducting rituals for both the home and the village. And they are the type of people who each indigenous leader must have an Igqirha who actually supports him through leading the village. Then you have got the second category, which is known as Amaqhele. Amaqhele, they are very much educated in herbs. They are making herbal and animal-based medicines for treatment of physical symptoms. Then you have got Abathandazeli. Abathandazeli, they conduct Christian prayers and making of holy water. And then you have got Amatola. Amatola too are similar to Amaqhele because they actually have got a deeper understanding about medicines within this area. And then you have got the older women who are encased within their households, who really hold so much knowledge about the indigenous herbs of this area. There is also a belief that these women are the people that teach their grandchildren about the indigenous herbs, are the people who actually ensure that Amagqirha, Amaqhele, Amathandazeli, Amatola are actually there because they are the center of the home and they actually root the home in terms of the traditions of Amabomvane and the rituals of Amabomvane. Next slide, please. Now, coming to the relationship between the indigenous community and the allopathic healthcare providers in this area, I classify this as a silent symbolic violence. And I have already said that there is here a secondary hospital, and there's also 10 clinics. And these structures, they are very much apparent in the area. They are colossal, and the aim is to dominate and to influence the peoples of this area. But the people of this area, they are resilient. They say, no, you can be as dominant as you are, but we also respect our indigenous healing and our indigenous healers. So allopathic medicine in this area focuses on curative care. There is general and paradigmatic differences. Indigenous community believes strongly in understanding the background of illness, and to them, illness is about broken relationships. And for one to become better, one needs to heal relationships. How healthcare is delivered by the hospital is a huge frustration to the indigenous community. Indigenous community appreciate being helped with stabbed chest and car accidents, but for the indigenous community, this is not enough without understanding why a person was stabbed or had a car accident to prevent this from reoccurring. Indigenous communities still hold strongly to their indigenous health practices, and this is a thorny area for allopathic medicine, as they believe patients are brought to the hospital quite late, presenting with complications. Allopathic medicine holds a high moral ground, chastising sick persons from indigenous community after using indigenous medicine. Biomedical trained nurses at night in the quiet consult indigenous healers. Chastising result in a veil of secrecy and a violent silence. No one wants to talk. When a patient has consulted at night, the indigenous healers, because there's no ambulance to bring her to the hospital. So what does she do? She goes next door to the indigenous healer to assist. But then during the day, she goes to the hospital. But in the hospital, she will not tell the nurses and the doctors that she have consulted an indigenous healer at night. So there is this violent silence between the allopathic medicine people and the indigenous community. And these two health systems are running parallel at the same time. So what then? So the work that we have been doing here, we have been busy with both sides and trying to see how best can the strong indigenous healers of this area be given a space to breathe and to really practice their vocation openly. And how can there be a relationship between the indigenous healers and allopathic medicine? So in this regard, we had actually an indigenous student who had trained in indigenous healing as well as in biochemistry. So she struggled between these two areas. So we really situated her in this area, and she really had an opportunity to engage with indigenous healers and really get a deeper understanding of really what are the ills, where are the challenges. And for her, her suggestion was actually a reconciliation model. Next slide, please. So what does this reconciliation model suggest? So, well, one can see that these are two opposing worldviews, right? And Amabomvane, they really are holding very strongly to their worldview. And they also don't understand the Western worldview. And they feel chastised and ignored the indigenous knowledge systems. And there is an epistemic destruction that is actually happening here. And the Amabomvane are resisting that epistemic destruction. So what then should happen? So these two worldviews, there's a need for these two worldviews to actually reconcile. Secondly, there is a trauma that has happened here. Trauma happened first with colonization, secondly, with the apartheid system, and then thirdly, all now the trained apartheid individuals. That means, what do I mean? I mean, if you enter the schools, if you enter the areas of religion, if you enter the hospital and the clinics themselves, you have got these trained individuals who are trained in this modernity, who in some ways, they are trained to look down on indigenous knowledge system, as well as in indigenous healers. So then this community somehow feel humiliated within the knowledge system, a school system, within the religion, spirituality system. They feel humiliated at health system. They feel humiliated. So then what has happened? The spirit of Bomvane has actually gone into hiding. They can't even do anything about their own land because they are paralyzed from being attacked by biomedicine and colonization and the apartheid system. So there is a need to acknowledge this disruption and this attack that actually has happened to this community. And then the third element is reconciliation with the natural environment. For Bomvane, everything is symbiotic. The placentas of their babies, the placentas of their animals, the dropping of their animals, the dropping of human, all this is connected. But they are informed to ignore all this and see life within disrupted little pieces and little piecemeals. And this actually have really undermined the thinking of Bomvane. And Bomvane see this, they see it as poison, and they don't know how to run away from it. So there is a need now to reconcile Bomvane with their environment, with their trees, with their waters, and with also their human beings who used to fertilize Bomvane with placenta of the children and placenta of animals and the waters of this area. Then there exist the indigenous healers. As you can see them in that photo, they have resisted being broken down. They are right there, and they are continuing with their herbs, they are continuing with their dances, they are continuing with their spiritual world, whereby for them, there is no time. The past, the present, the future is all connected, and they can transgress through all these dimensions and create one connected item. So this group of people in this reconciliation model are critical in terms of the healing that actually needs to happen in Bomvane. And then lastly, there's the last slide. I want to share how the indigenous healers have already started suggesting what needs to happen to this land, to Bomvane. And this model, one can see that it's actually focusing on social determinants of health. And this model has been created by the indigenous healers of this area. What are they saying? They have got 7 articles. They are saying nature. They start with nature. They say nature is complete and requires nothing. So we as humanity, we come and destroy nature and do all these sort of things. But nature is sublime and quiet and require nothing from us. And when they are speaking in this nature, they are speaking about the earth, the rivers, the forests, the animals, the peoples, and the spirits. Then they come to the second article. They say they are speaking now about the beingness and becoming. Now they are coming to the human body. They say being and becoming is always pregnant with lots of possibilities and resources. But the first point of call for them is to know oneself and have dignity. I have circulated a more explanatory document, which these articles have got more to offer in that document. I've just summarized them here so that they can fit in within a PowerPoint. And then the homesteads, they believe that the homes, which are the center for them, there's nothing as important as a home. And everything is rooted within the home. Homes need to be united, and they must show humbleness. There must be forgiveness and respect within the home. Families must be well nourished and growing, no fight, no violence, involvement in family activities without distinction in sex and creed. The fourth article goes to the older people in the home and the village. Older people, they need to know who they are, take their rightful position as older people, and act like older people. And then they have got all sorts of things they assign to older people that they should do. Then the fifth article is we have a huge role to youth. Youth must know their responsibility and respect parents, look after all aspects that could assist them to progress and learn. They must learn numeracy. I was surprised that indigenous healers are so concerned about numeracy, but they are. They want the young to actually be very conversant on numeracy skills. Stay away from areas and issues that will land them in trouble. Respect older, disabled people. Then coming to the indigenous healers themselves, that is Article 6, they say indigenous healers, they have got a responsibility for the health of the people. They must work as individual as well as collective with their gifts that they have been given. They must be in touch with ancestors according to how a person has been chosen. And then lastly, they speak to the indigenous leaders. It is important that indigenous leaders, they need to respect themselves. They must be responsible to assist government and councillors in solving village disputes. They must divide and allocate land in adequate manner. They must promote food security in their land. They must ensure safety and development of the youth and promote healthy homes for healthy villages. And according to the indigenous healers of this area, they believe that if these 7 articles can actually be implemented in all the areas, that means within education, within religion, within biomedicine, this would actually turn around some of the challenges that are faced by this community. I want to thank you all, and that's where I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I believe we have one more speakers. Dr. Rosemary. Yes, here you go. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So my task is to speak about the Zambian situation of indigenous healers and the freedom to practice in all the dispensations. It was quite a big task for me because I had to look at what has happened in within the Zambian setting. Now, I don't know what I'm doing right now because I'm supposed to go to the next slides and it's not giving me the next slide. So I'm starting with the colonial era. And from the Zambian perspective, one might think that because we did not have a suppression law like the South African had, therefore one may tend to think that it was easier on the traditional healers in that context, but experiences of the people were not as one would expect, as being easier. Why? Zambia was a British colony from 1924 to 1964. And the colony authority did not actively suppress traditional healers. Instead, their focus was on making sure that they loot as much wealth as possible. So their focus was, let's go in there, let's leave them alone, but we have to take as much resources as possible. We are here to take the wealth and let's do it. Now, with whatever it is that they were doing, what came with that or practice was a very subtle way of marginalizing the indigenous communities. First and foremost, Zambia has like 73 different groups of people, different tribes. And of the 73, there is my people, the Lumber tribe on the Copper Belt. So when I talk about the economic looting, it happened to my people, and they're still struggling with getting anything out of the mines that were theirs for centuries and centuries. But when the colonizers came, the British people came, they kicked them from the mines and they forcefully removed them and falsified whatever, and they are still looting from them, looting the resources from the mines. Now, with that, when the colonizers came, they didn't come alone. They came with an agenda of Christianizing the people. Now, with Christianizing the people came an idea that anything that was indigenous was paganism. These are pagans. They are not saved. They are not believers. We must bring them to God. Where they are destined for hell. We must not be with them. We must not be in contact with them. We must keep them away from us. And whatever it is that they are doing is backwards knowledge. It's unscientific. It's not research. Nobody wants to know what they're doing. It's some voodoo practice that cannot stand a chance of, if anything, whatever they are doing, they're just poisoning the people. And the medicines that you're doing is untested, and it's evil practices, and it's some form of ancestral worship, and it's demonic. It should not be practiced at all. So much as that was not written on a piece of paper to say, this is what we are doing to the people, that is what people felt. And that is what people still feel, that the indigenous leaders are marginalized. They are not to be seen in practicing in public. It's a hidden practice. It's isolated. However, when it comes to serving the communities, they serve the communities 24 hours a day. If anybody needed to deliver a baby, they will be there. If anybody has got whatever it is that they're struggling with, they will knock on a traditional healer, on an indigenous healer, and they'll get help. And most of the communities where I come from, they were forced because they had to own the mines, and people had to be forced into the deep rural areas so that they alienate the people from their wealth. So where people were placed then, they had no resources like hospitals. There are no clinics, there are no hospitals. So people then, they continue to practice in the absence of the influences of the Western medicines. So that then to us looks like it was a way people then managed to preserve their knowledge systems without people telling them in their faces every day that whatever you're doing is wrong. However, even in those communities, churches were planted, and that then brought the division with the people, where those who go to church who are Christians cannot practice whatever traditional healing and stuff, or go to traditional healers. So there have been that tension, and it's still existing like that, where you have people say, no, I'm a believer, I can't go to a traditional healer, or we have been told we can't go there. So that still happens in the Zambian context. So with that then, people were marginalized. Marginalization was evident, and is still very evident. And came exclusions. When they see somebody who is practicing whatever, people will run away from them. And then a kind of oppression on the people, where they feel they should not be practicing, not here, not just here. These people are demonic kind of thing. So there's been that kind of, what's the right word? Where people were being brainwashed. Brainwashing happened, where the people that embraced their own knowledge system with regards to indigenous healing, some of them have abandoned it because now they're believers, now they are Christians. There's been a very high degree of loss, because much as they were subjected to being in deep rural areas, there is still that connection with within a socialized kind of context. So with that then came a continuous marginalization of the indigenous healers. Yeah. So now, then we go to the post-independence. So came the independence of Zambia in 1964, and the government recognized the importance of traditional healers and began to integrate them into the national health system. Now, on paper, this looks very good. Yeah, when we talk the way we are talking, even the current situation of the Zambia instituting the Traditional Healing Practitioners Association of Zambia to regulate and promote traditional medicine. It looks amazing, but it doesn't happen. So they have said what they have said, but when you have to practice, people still look at you and wonder what you really doing. They must fear you, they must run away from you. And like, oh, it is in the South African context where those who have gone to Western medical practices, they will undermine and look down on anybody that has been trained by some Sangoma or some indigenous knowledge healing schools in some bush where there is no qualification. They don't know how they got a degree. They don't know how they examined them or tested them. So there is still people that will look at them and wonder, what are they actually doing? Can't they be civilized a little bit? Can't they see what is happening and just go to the hospital for goodness sake? So that is still very evident in the Zambian context. Can I have the next slide? The key factors contributing to lack of suppression. So in the context where we feel suppression actually did not happen as such, because when we compare with people that actually suppression laws, it was even much bigger. They had to duck and dive and so forth. To a large extent, there is a high possibility that they had it very bad than we had it in Zambia. However, from a Zambian understanding, they feel like the experiences are parallel, because the suppression, much as it was not on paper, and that was not a legal implementation thing, the way it happened, it's like there was just that balance. Like the same way I look at the way apartheid happened, where they apartheid and they suppressed the Black people and so forth. there also, it wasn't on paper, but we knew that we're being marginalized. We knew that we couldn't go to the white people's shops. We knew that you can't go to that street because you're Black. Everybody knew that. There was no law, but we knew. So there was that undercurrent law that was not documented, but it was there. Yeah. And if you contravened that law, you were imprisoned. So the same way came that we did not have a suppression law, but people were still suppressed. People were still marginalized and people were kicked out of, you can't come here because you do what you do, or you are dressed like that, you can't come to us. So much as they have been accommodating of the traditional healers in the deep rural areas where there are no hospitals, that accommodation happens very well. But where there is some form of civilization in the space, it doesn't happen at all. It's non-existent. Now, limited colonial interference, the British authorities focused on economic exploitation than cultural suppression. They just wanted to take and take and take, and they're still taking. And then the government actively promoted traditional medicine as a complement to Western health. Yes, that complementation happens, like I mentioned, in very deep rural spaces. In modern so-called towns, there is no indigenous healer that will refer somebody to the hospital and they accept it. Or like we heard from our South African colleagues, where you have a medical doctor referring somebody to an indigenous healer. It has never happened. Even in the Zambian context, that has never happened. Yeah, could I have the next slide, please? Who's helping with it? Is that the next slide? I just put a cartoon there. Yeah, what are the benefits of this approach? Preservation of cultural heritage. So the traditional healing practices have been preserved and passed down through generations. That has happened in some instances where you have the great-grandfather was a traditional healer, the grandfather was, and the father was, and stuff like that. In my own family, we had, my grandfather was an indigenous healer. And my father was a teacher, but besides teaching, he also did indigenous healing. So you will have people coming to our house, consulting, and you will have herbs to give them and stuff like that. And with that then, because he was educated and whatever it is that he was doing could be seen. We would see him taking, let's say, guava leaves, and he would say guava leaves help with this and this and this. So with that then, he documented everything he was doing. It's pawpaw leaves, it's guava leaves, it's mango leaves, it's whatever it is. He put it in writing for us. And he passed on that knowledge to say, if you need to, this is how you follow the steps you follow to cure somebody from menstruation cramps, period cramps, or stomach cramps, or whatever. This is, he has written that for us to sort of carry on with the trade should we want to. And I think that was very generous of him because I would have not known where to start from. And then accessibility to traditional healers provide essential health services, especially in rural areas where Western medical facilities are scarce. And that is true because you can go to a traditional healer any time of day and they will not say we have closed. There is no time to open and time to close in indigenous healing. Anytime they accept you and anytime they will attend to you. And then there is an integration with Western medicines. That's what we want to think. And because we want to think that they should learn from us in terms of how we do holistic healing. Because our healing we don't just cure the symptoms. We go to the root cause of the problem. Would I have the next slide, please? So there are challenges with regulations, whereby We need to ensure quality control and standards among traditional healers, and it remains a challenge. And then collaboration between traditional healers, indigenous healers, and Western healthcare practitioners is still evolving, and there should be more research done to document and validate traditional healing practices. So when we've got all these checkbooks, now with this, there are very few people in the indigenous knowledge systems that go around sharing the practices with whoever wants to. And I think when we are talking on collaboration, there is a lot of fear with that, because there are situations where indigenous healers have shared the herbs with the people to test in the labs. The results come and they tell them to say, oh, it actually worked. Yeah, but we must still look into it and so forth. Today they have said it has worked. Tomorrow they tell you, actually, I think the preliminary findings seem to be okay, but now when we really looked at it, it didn't work. Watch them. A year later, they have patented the medication and it is in pill forms and they are selling on the market. They kick the indigenous leaders out of the circle of making any kind of profit with the knowledge that they have shared with them. So with that experience, then it becomes challenging to trust them again. Next slide, please. So the overall Zambian approach to indigenous healing have helped preserve cultural heritage and promote health accessibility. However, there is still room for improvement in regulation, collaboration, and research. Thank you very much. I think this is where I end. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think the camera is on and it's much better because we can tell your emotion and it just more vivid. and thank you. I like all the stories. It's such a powerful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we have lots of time and we have enough time for like Q&A session. And so when we are kind of processing you know, the presentation we have just heard, and feel free to raise your hand on Zoom. So we will pass the, okay, Vivian. And so how about Vivian goes first? And I know Holman had already put a question in the chat box. And maybe Holman, you can go next to ask your question. And we will start from there. Yes, Vivian.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful to be here again with you. And I'm so happy to hear how India is going on and Africa is going on with ancestral wisdom. And yesterday, hearing the experiences from China and also sharing the experiences from Bolivia, it is so amazing how our people have survived, have struggled, how our people, even though we have faced persecution, murdered, here in the Andean region, here in the Americas region, it was named extirpación de idolatrías, idolatry extirpation. So they would kill everyone that would promote ancestral wisdom. And it is amazing to see how everything is still alive in the world, and especially for the most humble people in our ancestral indigenous communities. That's why I just want to say thank you and gratitude for this opportunity of sharing with India and South Africa today, because we need to remember that we are together, struggling together, looking for an answer beyond the world crisis, climate crisis, and also the health crisis that we have faced during COVID-19 have shown the world that our ancestral medicine is effective in territory, that we have not been killed by the virus because our people have taken care of us with herbs, with healing, with ceremony. So it is very necessary to promote this issue inside PHM. So I do salute and I do send my congratulations to all of you and to the team of People's Health Movement and Roman Vega for this event. May we start here to go on with some other topics, and this South-South global dialogue go on to strengthen us in our territories. Thank you so much. You are so kind, because it's wonderful to know that we are together struggling in the same line for respect for our people, for our ancestral wisdom in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vivian. And Holman, do you want to ask your question first? And we have a line of questions here
Voy
in
a
the chat
hablar
box.
en español.
Yes, I'm going to speak in Spanish.
Simplemente quiero
I just wanted to show, I translated a question posed by Cristobal that reads the following. It was in English, but it's a Cristobal question, and that question reads, what's the relationship between knowledge and practice of ancestral medicine with identity, cosmovision, economy, land ownership, education, and political life in India? And I found that question very interesting. When we discussed this with Ravi Narajan from India, he told us that when he read the document that was drafted by Latin America, he found that this was a very strong document. It really caught his attention, though, the fact that there were clear context differences among experiences of traditional medicine in different regions of the world. However, in the presentations from Africa and Latin America, I see lots of similarities in terms of the circumstances that were faced by the peoples, and also in terms of cosmovision and the view of the world. Traditional medicine is not only a healing tool, but actually it bears a vision of the world, a vision of human beings and their relationship with nature. And also it carries a lot of a broad cultural items, just beyond the tools that are used to heal. So I find those similarities between Africa and Latin America. But my question regarding that fact is the following. China has a long history of struggle against coloniality, decolonial struggle and independence struggle, and a struggle to reaffirm an economic, cultural model of their own, that is to have a strong historical culture. However, India, despite the fact that they reached their independence in the 40s, they gained their independence from British colonialism. They have a history, a colonial history that, or the traditional history, sorry, that the British colonies were not able to destroy, as it did happen in Latin America, because there were genocide in our land. There was an enormous genocide imposed by Spanish colonialism, and then there was an imperial domination of our culture. But still, there was a great resistance on the part of indigenous peoples to defend their culture here in Latin America and the Caribbean. So I see that Africa followed the same path. They are bringing back their own cultural values. They are defending traditional medicine as a substantial element in cultural reconstruction of African peoples against colonial and imperialist and religious domination, we have to also bring attention on religion. Religion became a weapon to support colonial domination and imperial domination, and it went against traditional medicine. So I wanted to point that out. And finally, I wanted to say that we are very thankful for all this common effort, this collaboration with the Global Sustainability University and the PHM, because this has opened a new area for dialogue that we did not have. We have to continue feeding that to strengthen our struggles, acknowledging ourselves in the shared experiences, but also in shared cosmovisions and perspectives regarding future building. So I wanted to say that, and I wanted to bring Cristobal's question forward as well. Thank you.
I know Cristobal, he raised the hand. Let me see if I can. Yes. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hello, good morning from the Mayan land of Guatemala. First of all, thank you for this invitation to this wonderful two-day event. There are many similarities among our realities, but also a great challenge ahead. I would say that this great challenge is not only to try to recover ancestral medicine, but also we have to organize ourselves. And we have to have a comprehensive approach, because we see the same everywhere. For example, the African situation is very similar to our situation in the Americas. What happened to us also happened to them centuries ago. So there are common experiences. So what we have to do here is to continue sharing these events and discuss them, but also we have to organize ourselves. We have to find a way of organizing ourselves, because if we only use our rights in nature, because we exist thanks to nature and to that cosmic law, but there are some laws that support our rights, so we don't have to wait anymore. We have to organize ourselves, and in that way to defend our rights. Medicine is only one of the things that have been taken away from us by colonialism. So that was only the comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I noticed the Dr. Gubela MG, and her hand is, she raised her hand. And I just want to kind of point out, there is a question from a attendee here, and the attendee was asking who inherits the indigenous knowledge, men or women, in the societies of Africa and India. So maybe we can go to Dr. Gubela first, and if you have time, you can also answer this question as well. And then we can give Dr. Unnikrishnan the opportunity to kind of reflect and answer some of the question as well. So Gubela, the floor is yours.
Yes, yes. It's not a question as such. I was just wondering if there is a way of getting some interpretation, because I was very much interested in what Roman was saying and Cristobal was saying, but
Yeah.
Is it possible? And then maybe I can also try to respond to that question of those those binaries of sexes. We as Africans, we struggle a bit from the issue of creating binaries around the whole healing practices, that males or are dominant in indigenous healing, or women are dominant in indigenous healing. I think one of the forces that actually drive us, or that is endemic, is the fact that we as Africans, we don't have a dominant male figure who, like, for example, the Christians have got Jesus and other male dominant people that are, and whereas if you go maybe to the Arab people, they have got Mohammed, who is more dominant. But we as Africans, we are more unifiers and really don't have those binaries that women are holding more, male are holding more, but we would rather have a more unified. But on the other hand, the colonization and capitalism and apartheid, somehow they have targeted women in terms of putting negative connotations around the whole thing of witchcraft. And women had been very much attacked by both the colonies, the priests that were coming from Europe. They came with the whole connotation of ban the witch, which the witch was seen as being a woman. And so women, many women were actually being chased in their areas because they were seen as witches. On the other hand, when you look at the suppression law itself in South Africa, it was not only about women, it actually was about indigenous healing. It was about looking down upon indigenous healing. So somehow, we always say when we speak about indigenous knowledge system within the African context, that it's very difficult to sometimes understand some of these issues that are related to the African knowledge systems before Africans were actually colonized, because there are layers and layers and layers. And when you peel off these layers, you can see that the mindset of Africans had already been influenced by colonization. So there's a lot to understand and a lot which is actually unknown.
Yeah, it's kind of, there's a gendered notion to the Witchcraft Suppression Act, right? It's kind of
Absolutely.
Yeah. So to answer your first question, we have simultaneous translation. So if you take a look at the bottom of the computer screen of the Zoom page, and there is a the EN. So if you click on that, there are two channels. One is English and the other one is Spanish. So if you choose this English, when, for instance, when Holman and Cristobal, when they were speaking, we have interpreter at the same time translating what they were saying to you. I apologize, we didn't make it clear. Okay, I hope that settles. And Ritu, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Thank you.
Hey, thanks. I was just wondering, we are now, hearing so clearly the common experience of the reality across all our various regions and countries. In the PHM, how do we take this agenda forward? What are the ideas that Roma and others, all of you who've been more active in this within the PHM, what is the way forward? A question that I've always had, being part of health systems research and so on, is that the health systems people are not really looking at this as an issue. And within PHM as well, one finds that there's not been enough attention and sensitivity to it. So how do we, all of us here are on this agenda. And we're linking up with PHM in some way. But how do we see the other people in PHM getting sensitized to this issue? Is there some actions, or, some activity that we plan to take forward? Thanks.
Yeah, so Ritu, since you are here, I just want to kind of ask the question again. So in the context of India, even though it's binary, but who inherits the indigenous knowledge, like more men or women? Because that was the question one of the attendees asked.
Well, as Dr. Unnikrishnan had presented, we have these two streams. The classical stream, which is textual and very systematized text of Ayurveda, Unani, Tibetan medicine, Siddha, and so on.
Folk.
And we have the folk tradition. The classical very clearly has been the expert will be known because their classical system, they are experts of that system, just as we have in modern medicine. And they were largely male, while the whole household would be involved maybe in the activity. But what has happened over time, since now traditional medicine is, we get formal degrees in Ayurveda and Unani and so on, but it is not given the kind of value that it did in earlier times. So the men have moved away from its practice. And more women are now, because it's a formal college system, women are allowed as much space of entry. And therefore, there has been a feminization of Ayurveda. There's enough studies on that really showing that data, that many more entrants into Ayurveda colleges. At the folk level, it's been very mixed. Birth attendants would be largely female, but for the others, herbalists and so on would be a mix. So at the folk level, it's been mixed, but in the classical, as always happens in the formal system, it's the male which has been dominant. And that is now getting corrected, but corrected because for the wrong reason, that it's now got less value than the modern system. So many of the one knows of many sons of traditional healers, of the traditional classical healers who have taken to modern medicine, and the women and their wives will continue with Ayurveda. So,
thank you. That explains a lot. Thank you. Homan, go ahead.
I'm going to speak in Spanish again for practical reasons, and because we are also here with colleagues and comrades that work in traditional medicine in Latin America, in Colombia. We are at a place called Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta. We have 7 indigenous peoples here that are practicing traditional forms of medicine, and they are also defending their territories. This is a comprehensive program, as Cristóbal mentioned. It is very broad. It is a program for that defends knowledge and practices in traditional medicine, but also defending Mother Earth, water, biodiversity, medicinal plants. This is a dream. This is a search or a quest for a new form of society. That is our attempt, our intention of the World's Assembly of Health, People's Health, that was carried out in Argentina in April. So to respond to Ritu, we, Ritu here, will move forward in the construction of a global space in relation to the global people's health movement related to popular and ancestral knowledge in relation to health care. This is the mandate of the 5th Global Assembly. We need to organize this. We are advancing, we are developing in Latin America. The invitation is to our colleagues and comrades from India, from Africa, from Europe, if they exist, and from North America, that we all join in this project. And the call for action of the 5th Global Assembly has given it a lot of strength. I believe that this dialogue that we held yesterday and today is a window that opens up. We wanted to do this so we could meet at a global level, so that we know that we are not isolated, ones on this part of the earth, the others on the other, but we need to stand together. And I believe that the support from China in this very clear process, as it has been happening, is going to help us achieve this objective. My proposal is that after these two conferences, we should meet. We should do a joint meeting between China, Africa, Latin America, from the PHM and India, to reflect what we learned, what lessons have we learned after these 2 days of dialogue, and how we can trace a path toward the future. That's the idea, Comrade Ritu. Thank you very much. Duni in Arhuaco language means thank you. Duni means thank you. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you. Vivian, yes.
Thank you so much. I was so impressed how related we are. I mean, we have been prosecuted as witchcraft or witchery. Sin embargo, none of the less, when I learned the origin, bruja, the word in Spanish for witchcraft or witchery, bruja, brujería, bruja. When you learn the origin of this word, it is brug, which comes from Netherlands and comes from ancient language over there. Brug means, brug, it is bridge, a bridge. So the bridge between the world that we see and the world that we do not see is the same as I explained it yesterday in the Chacana, the connection between this world, material world, and spiritual world. So our ancient people, which were dequalified as witchcraft, witchery, or whatever, they were just being prosecuted because they were people of wisdom and people and power and wisdom to guide and take care of communities. That's why they were prosecuted by power. That's why they want to eliminate our wise ancestral people, because they would guide our communities to liberation, through decolonization. Well, so now it's the time that we are alive. That's why we need to remember this witchery, bruja, bridge, the bridge between the world, invisible world, and this visible world. So we have these beautiful ancient wisdom, ancient traditions alive now, because we do perceive and we do dialogue and we do interact with this spiritual world, with this invisible world, so-called like that. But when you go deeper in quantum physics, you remember how every little atom, every little movement of energy now is making the process of equilibrium in this life. That is why we talk to the spirit of wind, of fire, of earth, to the spirit of Mother Earth, of water, because all of them are alive, like we are. And our ancient people, they preserved this wisdom. And even though maybe science, modern science, Western culture has been committing genocide to take our land, to take our knowledge, our identity, even though we have resisted, because spiritual world cannot be controlled by that. Because even though we have met people that dream about the ancestors, dream about the sacred places, dream about the medicine, dream about the plants and the power every plant has, because they are communicating and interacting with us, because we need, as healers, we are like these antennas, we are like these very sharp signals. So we receive the information and we translate it so we can heal. But healing is not like only healing, it's equilibrium and harmonization. So when you have harmony with the spiritual world and your material world, is that when healing happens. That's why we talk about the defense of our territories, of sacred places, of water source. Otherwise, without water, without healthy food, none of us would have health. That's why it is spiritual, but it also is the struggle for our rights to land, our right to health, our right to healthy food. So, because some other views, they just see like this little spirituality so functional to capitalism, to mercantilization of wisdom. But we talk about social struggle. Our spirituality is to defend our land, to protect our people, to heal our communities all together, not for someone becoming individualistic, egocentric, egolatry. because some other people has this individualism is part of mind, colonized mind. When you think you are going to be very powerful and very famous because of your medicine, it is egocentric. It is individualism colonized your heart and your mind, because we need to remember, if you have this gift, is to serve with humble attitude, with humble, to heal our humble people. That's why we need to remember that we are community. If we have the gift, el don, we have the gift of healing, of midwifery, or different gifts that we have been given by life, by the sacred spirit of life, is to serve our people, not to become this part of capitalism, colonialism, or imperialism. That's why we are doing this in this struggle, very strong position in this, like our struggle for our identity is anti-capitalist, because capitals are based on the market, but we are based on the defense of life, and with solidarity, with love, with care for each other, which are very deep anti-capitalist models. That's why it is anti-imperialist, because we are remembering we don't want to be colony of anyone. We are free people, and as free people with self-determination, we will struggle for how we want to do things. That's why I do take this little moment to send power, strength, and love to Maori people resisting now, today, to these lawmakers that are British colonizers. So in the world, we are struggling, because now it's our time to raise up our voice. Now it's the time that we can ask for the strength of the spirit to transform here our reality against injustice, against illness, against whatever they have brought us that is causing us this harmonic life. We are bringing this to harmonic again, remembering that we are community. We are one humanity, many different colors and diversity, very beautiful like the rainbow, but one humanity struggling together for dignity for all of us. Not only my country, your country, that, no, it's for all of us as humanity. So when they call us witches, when they call us menospreciating and with racism, they want to tell us witches. It's just their ignorance. For us, is the equilibrium and the capability to relate and to talk with the spiritual world, to heal and preserve our culture, our people, and life on this earth, on this material earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vivian. Sending so much love and just powerful concluding remarks. So I want to see if our speakers today and yesterday, I think everyone is here, all the speakers, and if you have any final remarks you want to share with us or reflection, I think we can still have 5 minutes-ish before we conclude. Yes, Dr. Unnikrishnan.
Yeah, thank you once again for the wonderful session. I think, I just wanted to maybe reflect on what Roman mentioned, because I think he raised several points. I mean, how our struggles are relating to identity, worldview, economy, land ownership, education, and political life. I think all interlinked, very complex questions. Just that I wanted to respond briefly from Indian point of view. One of the things that probably when we read the position paper from Latin America, we found that that's very, very much in line with this question that you have asked. But whereas in India, we found the situation is slightly different, probably because there is always a codified classical knowledge stream that kept alive both the indigenous and the more formalized systems of medicine or healing systems. So that could be, and even during colonization, I mean, we have had several onslaughts, not just by the Britishers, but India was colonized by the Dutch, the French, the Portuguese, because Portuguese were the first to come to India. And though the colonization effects were very different in each of these contexts, and the knowledge was documented, often it was transported to different museums and so on. But I think the knowledge domination could not happen, not the political India today, but the Indian subcontinent, because Indian subcontinent, I mean, from Pakistan to Bangladesh to Myanmar to Sri Lanka and so on, it did not happen probably because of this knowledge thing. But of course, the Britishers were able to colonize the bodies in India with all the epidemics and the various things through the medical systems, the cantonments, care, and so on. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I think it's also about today the question is more about the struggle between or within the traditional medical system. The more classical and formalized is always challenging the indigenous tradition. So I think there is a struggle within the system already. And so the non-licensed, non-regulated practices are being continuously questioned by these formalized traditions like Ayurveda and Siddha physicians. So that's a very big struggle. So I think all these are very broad topics, and I think these need very clear discussion and reflection. So I think it's been a very, very wonderful session. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So I do want to acknowledge we have I think 3 hands up from our audience attendee. So we're gonna let them speak and hear their questions. So the order we're gonna go with Hossa first, Hazel second, and Cristobal third. So Hossa, could you please unmute yourself?
Hello, can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Hello. Yes. Okay. First of all, thank you for this wonderful participation here, and I totally agree with all of our speakers. Yet I would like to mention something, that even though here in my country we have a very well studied constitution according to the rights of the indigenous people, we are still influenced by the allopathic medicine. They have given the indigenous people the rights, but yet they're still being watched as inferior, as witchcraft, or any other names. I would like not to say that here because it would be very rude. And one thing concerning Dr. Ramon and I'm not sure, Gumji, they were discussing about the cosmovision. Yes, indeed. The ancestral medicine is not only based on itself as it is medicine, that's it. No, it is based under the cosmovision, which is a principle, an ancestral principle, a philosophy that is based on 3 elements, which is the cosmo, nature, and human. None of each is superior or inferior to it, and it is worked under the concept of respect. So in order for ancestral medicine to function properly as it should, it should be under the conception of, under the cosmovision, the ancestral cosmovision. And as Vivian also was explaining, that this is not only medicine itself, we are connected, because in our beliefs, we have no borders. So indigenous places or areas, what we call in the New World countries, doesn't work. That thing doesn't work here in our indigenous beliefs, because we work and we move in a spiral movement and without borders. We are connected from one place to another through our, let us define it as our a spiritual mean. We can connect from one country to another, one community to another through our spirit, so through our connection like this. And the other thing I would like to also mention, that the only way out from this, this, let's say, life we are living nowadays, this lifestyle, or this what we always face, diseases and all of these, for us to get out of this, the only way is through the ancestral cosmovision. Because for the survival of the human species, and I will repeat, the survival of the human species is only and only through the ancestral cosmovisions. There's no other way out. I agree that I think instead that there are people that would not accept to that, but really allopathic medicine is only there just to end humanity and human species, because we have seen lots of diseases coming up and lots of conditions, disorders that medicine cannot explain it, and they are the cause of, allopathic medicine is the cause of many of these diseases. So, and yes, once again, thank you for this participation, and really we have to unite, because the only way out is through union with the all of the nations around the world, all of the ancestor people around the world, because this is our only way out. We cannot be subjective, only one and one and one. No, as I said earlier, in the indigenous belief, in the ancestral beliefs, there are no borders. And if we have to go on, the only way is through union. We cannot other way around, because we will still and are still facing how to say that? We are still facing deep issues and not allowing us to talk. Besides the laws, besides all the constitution that we all have, but no, we are still being demonized and not allowed to say whatever we want to. All right, so thanks again for this participation, and I hope this won't be just an into archive or something like that, but we should continue. Thanks a lot once again. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And Hazel, I will click on allow to talk. The floor is yours. Yes, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, thank you. Greetings from Central America and the regional committee here in Costa Rica. And also greetings to Roman, who's making this great effort. And also greetings to all the panelists. I was saying in the chat box, I was telling you an experience that we live here as part of that connection that we have among all the peoples of the globe. There lies the importance of these spaces to acknowledge one another and to strengthen one another, because ultimately we are leading similar struggles around the world. So I was saying that, for example, when I was born, this is a city called Escazú in Costa Rica. This is popularly known because of its traditions, but also back in time it was how can I say this? It was medicine with plants was practiced here, so that made it be known as the city of witches. Our logo, let's say, shows an image of a woman dressed as a prototypical witch, that is, with a big hat and all of that. But the struggle was not over there. I think feminist movements really felt that attack on our gender because of our practices. Many times women need to resort to herbs, to plants, to prepare medicine in order to heal or to soothe an ailment. So that has been our practice ever since the beginning. We always have a plant of mint or rosemary or other plants that we know are useful for our homemade medicine. So going back to the topic of that witch denomination, which has a very negative meaning as a way of judging women, well, we as women have converted this. We believe that we women, we witches, are people of great knowledge, because in order to heal, you require knowledge. You have to know what plants to use. You require that wisdom. So also, we have to continue being empowered to be strong enough to apply that knowledge. The feminist movement has really focused on changing that mindset, because we know that this is not the way it is, as they are trying to point out to us. So we are trying to reclaim our ancestral knowledge, our struggles, and we as women have managed to, at least here in Costa Rica, use the term witch as an empowered woman, as a woman that has lots of knowledge, and we have managed to avoid being called witches. For example, here in my community, in Escazú, we still call ourselves the city of witches. Wherever I go, I say I am a witch because I was born here. So it's an honor for me to know that I have knowledge on plants. Of course, I don't have 100% knowledge. I would have dreamed of having our ancestors' knowledge, but we do try to reclaim that knowledge. So I always say I am from Costa Rica, but I am also a witch, so that stereotype, that negative stereotype, is removed. So I don't know who said that we are on a constant struggle, a daily struggle, a permanent struggle, so that we always shed light on our positive contribution. So I believe that that is one of the things that we have to face still. I agree with Roman in what he said about acknowledge one another in these spaces, and I also really felt what the woman from India was saying, that she was called a witch. So I really identified myself with her, because in many areas of the globe, people have been resistant like me. So we have been made to suffer with those attacks. So we have to continue going forward. This is just the beginning, as Roman said. This is a calling for action, and the calling for action at the Fifth Assembly was very strong. So I think all of us together can manage to find a way out. So thank you very much, and a warm hug from this witch here in Escazú. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I like the kind of play with the word. So we have one more hand from Cristobal. And if I may, I just want to be respectful of everyone's time, because we have, from everywhere, all around the world. I know it's pretty late for some of the attendee. So Cristobal, if I may, could you just make sure your question or reflection is, I don't know, within like 2 to 3 minutes?
First of all, thank you so much for this invitation. So we share many realities over the globe. So this is a challenge. I would say that we have to be hopeful to save the world, because the Western medicine system is a consumerist system, and it destroys. It's programmed to exterminate human species. And this is what we observe here in our country, in our continent. Poison is contained in chemicals, but ancestral medicine is medicine for life. It's comprehensive medicine. It's medicine that goes to the root of the problem. We are still challenging colonialism today, but in Guatemala, many years ago, an ancestral medicine leader was burnt alive. So reality is very similar around the world. So the challenge is to continue exchanging knowledge and recovering medicine and to prepare to train new people in each nation. There must be exchange among nations as well. And that means organization. Lastly, if we do have a regional organization and we manage to visualize, to foresee a world system, not only in terms of right to medicine. Imagine if we had a World Indigenous Peoples Council in the UN, that would be a great dream to be achieved. So thank you.
Thank you, Cristobal. Before we end, I want to see if our three incredible speakers from Africa, do you have any final remarks? That Mercy and Gubela and Rosemary, if any of you have any final remarks, that'll be great.
I think it has been such a humbling experience to listen to other speakers and contributions from other parts of the world. And for us, it just encourages some of the work that we are doing to support the indigenous healers as they are fighting for their self-determination. And for us, there is also a larger sense that this is so important, especially towards sustainability, as we see the challenges of the disasters of global change and all these disasters that we are seeing globally. We think that somehow that knowledge of indigenous healers can really contribute to some of a future sustainability for future generations. And I think that I'm sort of also humbled for myself personally, I'm humbled to hear the whole concept of ancestors and spirituality and how we need to revoke those spirits and bring them to the surface to guide us as we really are facing these daily challenges. And we also need to support indigenous healers because there was a space and time. They were really the first healers. There was nothing else. There was no biomedicine. There was no allopathic medicine. There were only indigenous healers. So indigenous healers, they need to take their rightful position. So then we need to play a supportive role to actually support them, support their voices to come to the surface so that they can actually take their rightful position. Thank you.
I can't say it better than you have said it. You have actually positioned the African voice. If we can stand the way you have said it, our way will be clearer, our way will be paved, we will know where we are heading to. Having that voice of empowering them and telling them to say, you can't be hiding anymore. Take up a stand. Let's go back to who we are as a people, as a continent. This came, and it's not even covering everybody. But the indigenous healers are still the ones who are covering communities where the Western medication is not reaching. So with that, we can have that voice, we can have that torch that lights up the way. Thank you so much, and thank you so much to all of you. Ooh, it has been such an amazing experience. Thank you so much. And to the organizers, 100% from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very emotional ending, but it's so great to see everyone here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to kind of moderate today's workshop. And we will edit the recordings, and we will make it public later, and we will continue to organize conversations and workshops like this on traditional medicine. And in the long term, we do plan to have a joint book project, as as some of the speakers mentioned yesterday. So have a nice weekend ahead of you, and good evening, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.